We're going to be looking today at navigating the education system, so starting to talk about what to expect, what that may look like, what help and support duties and responsibilities are out there for you. So the main aim of today, we're going to look at what are special educational needs, what is the legal framework, medical needs responsibilities, what is SEN support. We're going to talk a little bit about the education, health and care plans, look at the right to appeal in brief, and then obviously what other support is available. So it's a bit of a whistle-stop tour around the education system. So what are special educational needs? So a child or young person who has SEN, if they have a learning difficulty or disability which calls for special education provision to be made for him or her. So this definition is if they're a child of compulsory school age or a young person has a learning difficulty or disability if she or he has a significantly greater difficulty in learning than the majority of others of their same age, or if they have a disability which prevents or hinders him or her from making use of facilities of a kind generally provided for others of the same age in a mainstream school or post-16. Bit of a mouthful that, but you kind of get the idea of what that means. So identification of special educational needs, so this is specified in 4 main key tests. So you have slow progress of low attainment, which do not necessarily mean that your child does have SEN. Equally, children who are making expected academic progress might have SEN. Children often have needs in different areas, and the needs may change over time. And schools need to identify which children have SEN so they can put the right support in place, not to fit a child into a category. And that's really important, that one, that the needs need to be met of the child, obviously what the child's needs are, not by obviously what the school feel they should be. So this all came about, the Children and Families Act completely transformed the education system back in 2014. And if you was next door, previously Steve Broach would have touched on how that came about. This now recognises that there's a new practice, code of practice, which is basically the school's Bible, practice of duty of care, responsibilities, everything they should be doing. And it's basically the guidance of what the school have to do. So this new SEND code of practice is applicable to all education settings, primary, secondary and post-16, although not higher education. It just states they're not universities. It also means under the Families Act they have to provide the local offer, which you may have heard reference about that today. The local offer is a provision of online services that your local authority must provide and guide you to, so it does meet the needs of children. Well, it's how they tend to meet the needs of children with special needs in your area in terms of through services, support provision, local communities, activities, that type of thing in the local area. It should involve some joint commissioning, so the whole point of your education, health and care plan, that all your education, your health, your clinical commission and your ICG boards now, they all work together to put a plan together. And the new EHC plans are a replacement of the old statements that used to be in practice for many, many years. And the SEN support has replaced what used to be School Action Plus. And then you've also got the LDAs, I think, which are in Wales and Scotland. Personal budgets can also be requested as part of your EHC plans, and that's more your social care element side of it. So if you do need to request for respite, short breaks, social care provision, that comes under your C part of the plan, which is your social care and personal budgets. And it should be there embedded to focus preparing for adulthood as well. So every year when you have your review, you're focusing on what's going to be happening next that forward year. So you've got a couple of bits of laws and legislation to protect you with this. The Equality Act in 2010, this specifies what the school's duties are, the school's duties and responsibilities with regards to disability. So they're duty bound to be making reasonable adjustments, which we'll touch on in a moment. They must not treat the disabled child any less favourably for a reason relating to their disability. They have a duty to prevent discrimination. The duty is anticipatory, which means they should be forward planning and thinking ahead of what that needs to be. The school have the governing body which is responsible to make sure it is implemented, and the school are accountable to their governing body. And the positive actions are permissible for pupils with disabilities, so there's some possible actions which your school have to follow as well. So reasonable adjustments, I'm not going to run through all of these, but they are quite self-explanatory, but basically all of those would be categorised as a school having a consideration to make a reasonable adjustment with regards to a child with disability. For example, some of them, a child that's maybe a wheelchair user or a sensory needs, wearing jogging bottoms instead of school trousers if they're sitting down and it's going to be hurting the waist, as long as they're smart black trousers or smart black joggers, that could be considered as a reasonable adjustment. Considering seating for a child with a hearing or visual impairment, consider where they're sitting in the classroom if they have auditory issues or they need to be nearer a screen, to make sure they relocate where they're sitting is a reasonable adjustment. Things like providing alternate space at break times if they have sensory overload or they're a bit overwhelmed, if they can have a quiet space to go to that can calm down, self-regulate, be away from the busyness, that would be classed as a reasonable adjustment. And obviously things like providing ramps, if they're obviously wheelchair users, it's an expectation, but the school have that duty to make any reasonable adjustments that are considered and requested. Along with the reasonable adjustments, best endeavours is another key word to be very mindful of. The schools must use their best endeavours. This means obviously they must make sure that a child or the young person gets the best support they need. So they have a duty to make these reasonable adjustments, they have a duty to use their best endeavours, they have a duty to follow the SEN Code of Practice to make sure that they're following all these guidance and can actively demonstrate what they are doing and how they are doing it to meet the needs of any person with or without a diagnosis. That's a very important fact. The caveat with the schools, a lot of schools say no diagnosis, no support, completely unlawful. They're not allowed to do that. So, like it says under the Code of Practice, it means that they're doing everything they can to meet the children and young people's needs with SEN. What does this mean for our children with medical conditions? So again, under the Children and Families Act, all state-funded schools must make arrangements for supporting pupils at school with medical conditions. Again, it's a requirement. They must make accommodations, adjustments and allowances for children with medical conditions. And the guidance in the Code of Practice and the Children and Families Act is very, very clear about what they should and shouldn't do. It contains information on schools' policies, the individual healthcare plans, and also highlights unacceptable practice as well. So there's a lot of guidance out there which can protect you as a parent and can help you guide down any delicate conversations that you may have if the school are being a little bit not cooperative, not very supportive, but there's a lot of information and guidance that we can point you to make sure they are meeting the needs as they're duty bound to do. So the policies of care are a very good starting point with school. Every school has to have a policy, be it a behaviour, medical, SEN policy, bully policy. The policies for medical is a good place to start with to see how they specify they should meet the needs of children with medical duties. Should be published on the website and they should be updated every year. So some of the things that you would be looking for that they must be doing is that they must have a named member of staff with overall responsibility with regard to that policy. So it may be the head teacher or the SENCO or somebody that actually does have responsibility for those policies. That person then obviously makes sure that the arrangements for ensuring all staff are aware of that child's medical conditions, so that information is distributed. They have a responsibility for training all the staff that will be dealing with your child's needs. They have a responsibility to cover arrangements and briefing of supply teachers. So again, anybody that is working with your child, be it permanent, temporary, bank staff, they must have full training and awareness of your child's needs. Procedures for when the school is notified that the child has a medical need, and procedures for managing the medicines in school as well. So they must have set procedures and policies in place for that. You have every right to see these policies. They will be published online on the website, so you need to make sure you're aware of them. Also developing and monitoring individual healthcare plans, and they are different to your education, health and care plans, which will have a very different direction if they are needed. So a healthcare plan will be different and will specify the specific healthcare needs and medical needs. And then obviously any arrangements for risk assessments that maybe need to be done for school trips, is any extra provision and reasonable adjustments that may need to be taken into place. So your SENCO, as you're aware, is the person that it stands for Special Educational Needs Coordinator. Every school must have a SENCO, but even if they have a SENCO, it's not always the SENCO that will be responsible for doing the training or the teaching of your child. It's their duty to oversee and to make sure they have access to the right training, resources, expertise, guidance and so forth. So it's the SENCA's duty to observe and then put different practices into place to make sure that they have the school staff have the right adequate support, provision, training, knowledge and experience. Okay, so supporting the SEN support, as you're probably aware, is a step before an EHC plan, so you're aware of that one. That's a very quick process of assess, plan, do, review. There you go, assess, plan, do, review. So that's what the stage they would have to do first before you get to your EHC plan. At that stage, then the school are duty bound to enlist specialist support, outreach services, ed psychologist, OT, physio, speech and language, anybody that could add any observations, value, recommendations on how to meet the needs of the child. And anyone can ask for an EHCP, as you're probably aware. It can be done by a parent, it can be done by the school, it can be done by both, it can be done by the young person. Anybody can actually put in a request for an EHC assessment. And as you're aware, it takes time. 6 weeks is that obviously you're informed, first of all, if they're going to accept the request to assess. 20 weeks, be mindful, is the legal framework. Very rarely happens in 20 weeks. There's not many local authorities that do meet that timetable, and it's frustrating as anything as a parent when you're waiting. But we always do say to you, you'd much rather have a qualitative plan rather than one that's been done fast to get it through the door and it's not worth the paper it's written on. So just be mindful. Sometimes they will take longer, 20 weeks, you've got to factor in half terms, holidays, summer holidays, Easters, everything delays it. So 20 weeks is the benchmark. Some local authorities it depends on how many of the cases they're doing with, how many volumes, it depends. But just be mindful, you need that plan to be accurate rather than fast. So they are duty bound to keep you in touch. If you've not heard from them within 20 weeks, then pick up the phone and say, I'd like to know where I am in the system, how you're getting on. So once you get your plan, obviously you've got certain sections of that plan that are relevant. So once you do get your draft plan, it's important you go through it with a fine-tooth comb to make sure it's thoroughly accurate. They've not missed anything, they've not forgotten anything, they've not misinterpreted anything, they've not omitted anything. They're very good at putting certain information in and missing certain information sometimes, so it's really important to scrutinise it and make sure, and the whole point of that draft is to make sure that you can say, yeah, great, or no, or you've missed that, or that's not there, or why isn't this in, or I'd like this to be added. You know, so that's your opportunity to influence those plans. So brief rundown of your sections of the plan. So A is the most important part for you as mum, as parents, to make sure you get everything in there which encapsulates and covers your child. So again, if anybody was to look at your child and not know them for the first time, everything they would need to know, in theory, should be in section A, and that can be as long as you want it to be, and that should be updated every year at your annual review. Your B then specifies the child or young person's obviously the actual needs in relation to SEN. C is your healthcare needs, so this will be more relevant with the HI, obviously what is actually the healthcare needs. Social care needs in D. Outcomes, which is very important in terms of how, who, what. That's for your SMART outcomes, the plan to make sure that any goal is measurable, specific, realistic, timely and accountable by somebody. K is all your information, advice and evidence gathered. F is the provision. G, healthcare provision. H, social care provision, and then obviously the naming of the place of the school, and J is your personal budget, your social care. So annual review. So once you get your plan, if you need a plan, and you do have a plan, obviously it's important that plan is reviewed every year, and it's always reviewed at exactly the same time, not exactly to the day, but within the same month, usually the similar date. It's important, the legal framework is it's reviewed every 12 months, and it must be done. That's a duty bound by law. And obviously that's then reviewed at the school with yourself. The certain professionals can be invited to that meeting. It's usually good if you know when that date is going to be in advance to try and agree that date with the school, because then if there's any specific people you want at that meeting, the school will ask you, is anybody that you want to invite? If you don't tell them, then they won't invite them. If you need certain people there or certain people to contribute to that meeting, in terms of written evidence of report, they will need more than the standard 2 weeks notice, which they only have to give them. So usually you get given 2 weeks notice, your review is going to be. For most professionals, that's not time in their diaries to enable them to clear if they're doing clinics to get to the meeting. But if you can agree a date in advance with the school, even a month in advance, it's usually good to say, well, I'd also like to give them the information, the people that you feel may be valuable to be at that meeting as well. And then so the meeting usually will be held at your child's education setting, and the relevant people that should be there that can input, discuss, make a difference should be invited. If they can't attend, then try and get a written recent report update of their observations of their progress. Not a pleasant area, Disability Tribunal, SEN Disability Tribunal. You have got different options if things aren't working well and things aren't going to plan in terms of when you can appeal. So parents can appeal against the following decisions, and that's within 2 months of the decision. These are very timely processes. So you can appeal, first of all, if they refuse to assess, if they refuse to issue an EHC plan, that can be appealed. Contents of any of those sections of B, F and I, any amendments to an EHC plan, refusing to make any changes after the review, and refusing to maintain an EHCP plan. So you've got half a dozen categories of what you have got the right to go to appeal or to tribunal over. Local offer and SEN information. So we mentioned earlier about the local offer. So lots of the support and provision that should be available for your children should be provided. It's called social prescribing within your local community. So this is accesses to local support provision. And the school must also publish, obviously, their SEN information report on their website, so you're aware of what local provision is available for them, and that should be published in their SEN policy too. And they should both easily be accessible, clear, straightforward, and obviously in common written, easy language that's easy to follow. You've also got your information and advice and IAS, which is your SENDIASS service. I don't know if any of you have used those at all, have heard of them. SENDIASS are a really great support. Whilst they work with the local authority, they don't work for the local authority. They're independent. They're usually commissioned by the local authority, but they're an independent advice service. So they can help support you with any of your educational issues that you may be having, any issues that may be having, struggling, dealing with the school, any conflict, any disagreements, any differences, any lack of cooperation. Your SENDIASS support services are a really good strength of support, and they're a bit like a critical friend, a bit of a mutual mediator between schools and local authority and yourselves. They're very overstretched, undercapacitated, so just to manage expectations, if you do need their help, it's not going to be a quick fix, so just to be mindful. Obviously, it may take some time before they can get to you. Sometimes they can attend meetings if they have enough notice and if it's relevant, but they are there to observe. They're not there to do for you. So they serve a purpose as a listening pair of ears, and to maybe offer some recommendations and offer guidance in terms of what they've heard and what they can maybe advise to do, but they can't actually do it for you. It's that critical friend approach. So SEND information, we have a wealth of information on our website, and we do lots of other workshops, but a lot more in detail that we do our online workshops and cover a whole range of education. So we have the support in the early years, which is your SEN support. We do extra support in mainstream schools. We do the educational healthcare plans, assessments, educated healthcare plans, transport to school, admissions, school choices, disability discrimination, SEN tribunals, and we also do them early years, primary years and post-16 as well, so you've got the right categories. It's pointless attending in early years if you're looking at post-16, so the information differs. But all that information is on our FAQ fact sheets on our websites, and we do workshops on those on a regular rotation basis on the website as well. Any questions at all from anybody at all?
You mentioned before about that they can refuse to maintain.
Yes.
Plan.
Yep.
Because I thought that it's just going with your child then until he finishes education. But they can.
It is supposed to, your plan can support you right up to the age of 25 if you remain in education or training. And that's the definition. A lot of local authorities try to get out of the or training bit. And or training can be classified as various different things for different people. It may resemble different things. For example, if you are still training an independent young person how to become continent if they wear nappies, it's still training them to do something. It's what level of support is relevant to that individual. However, the support offered in universities is a lot lower key. But if after they've done a school review, and they've done your annual review and they feel that there's no need to continue because either they're coming out of education, they're not going into post-16, they're not doing anything else, and there's no need to have a plan, they can cease it. Or if they feel that the young person is doing perfectly fine, doesn't need that level of support anymore, it's very rare, but sometimes they may do that. That's all about how to evidence the need and demonstrate that the level of support they are receiving via the EHC plan is the reason why they are still coping and managing and, you know, enabling to function in the education setting. So by withdrawing that support would have a detrimental effect and would be, you know, a worst outcome scenario. But sometimes they can refuse to maintain that plan. Usually you get to that stage at around 15, 16 when they're leaving the education system, unless they're going on to a college, specialist college. That's one of the tactics of most local authorities, saying, well, you don't need to, you know, you're going to college now, you're a big boy, go out, you know, go out on your own and, you know, navigate it on your own. But that plan is there to follow you through up to the age of 25 if it's deemed necessary. Okay.
What if school doesn't follow?
Content, refusal to issue amendments, refusing to make changes. If the school are also refusing to deliver, yeah, but they're not doing it, yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. You can, yeah. You have got a right to redress there. You can have a right to go to appeal mediation if they're refusing to deliver the content of that plan, because that plan is a legally binding document.
Well, theoretically they don't refuse.
They just don't.
I know for the fact that they don't do everything what is there.
Okay.
So
There is ways of putting some gentle applied pressure on them in the nicest possible way and reminding them what their duties are, reminding of them under the SEN Code of Practice, under the Equality Act, you know, that what they're duty bound to do. It depends how much of that battle and fight you want, and you want to keep working with that school if they're going to be there for some time. I'm more than happy to pick up a separate conversation with you to guide you through that. There is certain steps you can take, but sometimes it's a case of finding a way to air your concerns. You say you'd welcome the opportunity to have a conversation because you have concerns that, you know, but you need to evidence it. Can you know, if I'm not seeing any progress in this area, can you tell me what you're doing about it? How are you measuring the results? I can't, you know, there may be ways of applying some gentle pressure first before you then go down your legal.
It's mainly due to the staff shortage, because my son doesn't have one-to-one. He's got daily one-to-one session.
Okay.
That's what school budget is.
So the school.
For me, daily means daily, not
but
any other day.
That's where you'll need to check in your outcomes, that is specifically stated regard to what does that mean by daily. Does that mean 5 minutes a day? Is it 20 minutes a day? Does it specify a time?
Specify, yes, but it's not done daily, and it's not the amount of session which it is in plan, because we should have like 4 sessions daily a day, 3 sessions like arithmetic per week.
Okay.
And that's not what's happening during the week.
Right, so.
And I know that physically sometimes it's impossible to squeeze it,
but if it's in the plan and it's been agreed by the plan and it's been signed off by the school and the local authority, they're duty bound to deliver it, and they have funding via that plan to meet your son's needs. So it would be a challenge to you could actually request how they're using every single hour and penny of that plan.
Because they have to budget every single minute.
Yeah, they don't like having to produce money and accounts. You could go down that route, but I would probably suggest a few other methods first, because you need.
I had one meeting.
Have you?
But not a lot of change. So I think I will have to have another discussion.
Yeah, it may be a case of let's see if we can upskill you a little bit more to inform you, 1, what your rights are, 2, of what their duties are, 3, starting to quote a few reminders of the SEN Code of Practice and the Equality Act and what they're duty bound to be doing, and if they're not, then there's that evidence. If you can demonstrate, start keeping a diary if you haven't done already.
I started now.
Yeah, good. Okay, start doing that. And if you want to, I'll take down your details. We can pick up a separate call if you want and talk through some different methods and see how we can direct you and support you with that. But it may be a case of the school are just getting a bit complacent. By the sounds of it, they're getting a bit slack. And yes, they are overstretched, under-resourced. We realise that, but to be honest, that's not our concern. Our concern is...
The class for my son, they've got 11 children with SEND.
So they'll have a massive pot of funding to spend on them all then.
Yeah, but they've got only one TA who deals with all of them children and my son as well.
That would be the question then. If they've got 11 children with SEN, they should have 3 or 4 TAs because they're funded to do so. They'll have the funding to do that, to support, to meet the needs of them all, not just one person. So let's maybe pick up a separate call with that one, because every child's EHC plan comes with a pot of money for the school to carry out and implement and support your child's needs with the right measures, appropriate strategies, qualified staff expertise, monitored timescales. They've got the money. They're just not spending it by the sounds of it in the right way. Yeah.
Where they should.
Not where they should, no. Okay.